Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Issues with Wrestling. I'm Christopher Miles, and this week we're talking about oddly controversial subject comedy in wrestling. And I got a great panel this week to talk about the laughs of the squared circle. Joining me first is a very popular independent wrestler, the toast of Georgia and St. Louis. Ladies and gentlemen, CJ Shine. CJ, what's up, man?
What's going on, you guys? I miss all of you guys out there.
Also with us tonight is a local wrestling fan and attorney, Zachary Edwards. Zach, what's up?
Hey everybody, how's it going?
And of course, the uber fan of St. Louis and a stand-up comedian in his own right, Patrick Brandmeyer. Patrick, how you doing, buddy?
And good to see everybody.
Great. So the first question I have for you guys about comedy and wrestling basically comes down to, why is it so controversial? Why do people like the Cornettes of the world and other people think that comedy in our wrestling is such a bad thing? So CJ, we'll start with you.
Well, well, that's the funny part is I think that everyone gets so uptight about it because they think it has to be comedy throughout the whole entire match, and I think it's been overdone to go through the whole entire match. Oh, you're silly, 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 and then there's no payout at the end. So that's kind of without getting too far in it. I mean, that's why whenever I do my stuff, I try to separate that because it's a little different.
You'll make your opponent dance, you'll have fun, but you're still a serious wrestler at the end of the day, right?
Exactly, because it's more like playing mind games on the opponent.
Okay. So, Patrick, same question. What is the stigma of comedy wrestling?
I think some of it has to do with some people feel like wrestling should only be one way, I think. And
yeah.
But you look at a lot of shows and out of all the shows I've seen, some of the best ones have been the ones that are able to present a variety of product. You'll have the brawls, you'll have the technical, you'll have the high flying, you'll have the super indie, to coin a phrase, and you'll have the comedy. So and I've seen shows where pretty much everybody is out there working the same style, and if you have something like that, the fans may get a little burnt out on that by the end of the show. So as far as the stigma goes, I think as far as individual wrestlers go, I think you may have touched on it in the teasers that it can be difficult for someone to go from a quote unquote comedy wrestler to a serious contender, and they may be potentially sabotaging their future credibility.
Okay, that's fair. So, Zach, round us out. Same question. What is the stigma of comedy wrestling, and why do some people hate it so much?
Well, I think people hate it so much until they are in a comedy match. I mean, even Jim Cornette had plenty of comedy matches. He was he was a Ninja Turtle for like a feud and stuff like that. So the stigma, I think a lot of the stigma, of course, has to deal with some people just don't find something funny. And then so when they don't find something funny, they say, well, there shouldn't be comedy in wrestling. But it's okay if it is funny. And I agree with CJ. It's personally, if you have a match that's all comedy, or too much or done the wrong way, then it kind of does it kind of breaks that kind of breaks that kayfabe illusion. It's kind of
the contract with the fans.
It almost seems like you're sometimes, if you're doing something, if it's supposed to be a fight, but then you just have somebody that's just being a goofball the whole time, it kind of maybe some people just kind of find it's a little insulting and stuff.
So I guess like you wouldn't be a fan of like the matches with the Invisible Man, that kind of thing.
I don't mind it. It's fine, but I understand that's why people might get upset with it.
Okay.
And so, but I think it all depends on anybody who says that I don't like any comedy wrestling. Well, I guarantee that if the right comedy wrestling came by, they would like it just fine.
So we'll start with you for the next question. Is what is the place in the industry of comedy? Is it the let me up portion between two hard hitting matches? Is it levity? What do you think the place of comedy is in the business?
Well, I don't know. That really will depend on. That depends on the promotion. It depends on the show. It depends on the situation. But in most indie shows, let's say, there's a lot of people taking themselves seriously, and not a lot of people that are seriously good. And so I think sometimes, a lot of times in those, like in with a lot of shows, a comedy match is great because it will break up people being real serious and people having this, kind of the same flow of matches. And so I think that, that's always a good spot for it, is when you can break up kind of any sort of monotony. And there's a lot of monotony in shows, especially when you get shows that are 4 hours long and stuff like that. And so
I've been on a few of those.
yeah, and I just, so I think it can provide a good change of pace. And if you can actually have a comedy match that's actually pretty funny, then that's going to be a good match. It's going to be a fun, entertaining match.
Yeah. CJ, what do you think? I mean, what is the place of comedy on the card?
I mean, like Zach said, it depends on how you use it, how you perform it. If you, I think it could go into any type of match. I mean, you've seen from my matches that I could put it anywhere, from the starting match to the final match, to the main event. So it's more of like, kind of like, you got to take the, think about Dusty Rhodes. Think about what he did. He danced, right? He danced. He did all
Shuck and jive.
But he was serious about it. Like, he knew he was in the fight. He was just playing with that opponent. So I think it could go into anywhere, as long as you just don't overdo it.
But could you see a pure comedy character like a Danhausen being in the main event?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So Patrick, yeah.
Oh no, I'm sorry. No, it's just like all about like how you put things and how you use the psychology of wrestling.
Sure.
I mean, like, especially Danhausen. Danhausen could definitely take a main event and and go off with it,
And just to be clear, I love Danhausen. I own a couple shirts of his. I wasn't trying to be, besmirching. I was just saying, like, if that could be at the top of the card. So Patrick, what do you think? Where does comedy belong on the card?
I think a lot of times people would say it's good for like an opening match, get people's spirits up, get the fans into it, because a lot of comedy involves a little bit of fan participation, whether it's cheering for the person who is doing the comedy or kind of booing or laughing at the person who's trying to be all dead serious and who is the butt of the joke. But it's like Zach and CJ said, I think you kind of need to hit a certain balance with it if you're going to be a person who does comedy and on the same token is going to be seen as a serious contender. So that can be a tricky balance to strike, because I mean, you mentioned Danhausen. I think it took him a little while in AEW to really build up to where this guy can wrestle.
Yeah.
Because initially he just popped up, he did his curse, and every once in a while he'd get physically involved in the action, and he'd usually just get laid out.
There were plenty of people who thought that, like, the Danhausen and the Orange Cassidy characters would not work on a national stage, and I think they're being proven wrong so far, at least.
And Orange Cassidy is a great example as someone who took some time to build up his character. And I saw Orange Cassidy in Chikara. I went to a few Chikara shows back in the day.
Yeah.
And Chikara is a very gimmicky, very character-driven, and in a lot of ways very comedy-driven product back in those days. And the difference there was that Chikara had a certain atmosphere, a certain environment where you expected that, and it made sense. To where like people had credibility even if they were, say, wearing an ant mask.
Yes.
Or something to that effect. Or someone like when I went to the shows, the champion was Hallowicked, and he had the mask with the stem on it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, the next question we'll start with CJ is: do we, as fans and performers, take wrestling a little too seriously that we can't enjoy the comedy all the time, or what do you think?
That's a yes and a no question, because whenever it comes to
case
me,
by case basis.
Yeah, case by case. Because whenever I'm wrestling, I'm like, yeah, I can do this. Let's do it. Like,
Well,
shoot.
yeah, I mean, the basic thing is like the Cornettes of the world. I think that wrestling should only be this, blood and guts type of stuff. Simulated combat. It's like we can have fun with this too, guys.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people, which I'm going to use a term here, but people might hate me for it. People tend to overwork themselves whenever it comes to that type of stuff.
That's fair. So Zach, what do you think? Do we take it too seriously? Some of us, most of us, all of us.
A lot of us do, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think so. I think, but also, like I said, it's people take it very seriously until they find a comedy thing that they like, and then it's they're not so serious about wrestling. But yeah, I mean, I think overall the internet wrestling community tends to take wrestling very seriously.
See,
hate those guys.
I take it very seriously, and I've been accused of taking it too seriously at times. But at the same time, I do enjoy good comedy wrestling.
Right.
So it's still like I can enjoy both the great athletic matches and watching Orange Cassidy, lull someone to sleep while rocking them. It's all fun.
Orange Cassidy is a comedy wrestler that I think could absolutely, hold down and main event, big time TV, television wrestling. I think he could absolutely pull it off as a comedy wrestler. But he also has, I mean, there's always a point in an Orange Cassidy match where all of a sudden he's going, and and it's part of the whole balance. But I mean, his balance is way farther on the comedy side than what most anybody else can pull off.
And he's doing all these amazing moves with his hands in his pockets. So
right.
So yeah, I mean, you do have to have it to back it up. If you're gonna be comedy, you have to have that, because again, not throwing under the bus, but Santino Marella was an adequate wrestler in my opinion. He was good, but he wasn't good enough to overcome the funny elements of his character. So I know your answer, Patrick. I know that you're going to say we take this too seriously, but go ahead, because I follow you on Facebook. I agree with you, so go ahead. Take it too seriously.
I mean, I personally have been guilty of taking it too seriously at times.
Same. Me too.
And it's like I said earlier, variety is a good thing. That if every match was the same, you'd get a little bored with it. Because you see, I've been to Ring of Honor shows in the past where the crowd was burned out because it had everybody going 100 miles an hour from top to bottom.
Oh,
anyway, that's all right. So CJ, is there a too far with comedy? I mean, can you like, for example, DDT Pro in Japan? Love to watch it, but it's not something that I could watch all the time because it's just all comedy. So do you think there's a point where we go too far, and what is that point?
Yeah, I think if you have like way too many people, basically too many people doing the same thing, you get bored. I mean, sometimes we need it because, like, let's say the first match is always the one that sets the pace of the whole entire show, right?
Yes.
Well, if that first match doesn't come up to par, then it's the next match, and then the next match. You know what I mean? So everyone should be working to get better and get the crowd up and up and up and up all the way until the end. And I think that's when, if you could get the correct balance of comedy wrestling and actually wrestling kind of merge them together.
Yeah.
It, like, people are like, you get people away from that boredom, like, oh, let's just drink, blah, blah, blah. But then you get them hyped up at the end, and then the whole show is going to be just blown up.
Okay. So, Patrick, do you think there's a line? Is there too far with comedy?
I think it depends on the character and whether if the fan starts to get the impression that the comedy is all there is to someone. And you mentioned Santino earlier, and I think the fans were into his character. He was over, and the handful of times they teased him winning something big, if the fans reacted like they'd be all in for it, like when you had a near miss at the Royal Rumble,
yes,
or when you had a near miss at Elimination Chamber, both great examples. And because they'd pushed him to the point where even though his finisher, the Cobra, was a joke move, it won matches for him. So it was believable that he could hit that on even Alberto Del Rio or Bryan Danielson, and that might win him the match.
Yes.
So it depends on whether you're able to establish that what you're doing is capable of beating people higher up on the totem pole than your run-of-the-mill mid-carders, I guess.
Yeah. And I think how you play it, too, is if like CJ said, building up. If you build slowly with comedy throughout the night, I think it could work if you had an all-comedy show, but at the same time, you might get tired of it. Zach, what do you think? Is there a line?
Well, I think the line is when it becomes insulting to the audience. And that depends on the show, and that depends, DDD Pro has a lot more comedy stuff than most places, and but it's not necessarily insulting to the audience. I mean, and then WWE,
they know what they're getting. They're there
WWE
for
will
that.
have like one segment that is that's too much comedy, and it's like Natalia farting, like just because it's just insulting to the audience. It's not.
Mae Young giving birth to a hand,
or like and so I think that's really where the line comes in, is just when it becomes, because I mean WWE could have a show that's mostly all funny as long as it's not insulting and just like in boring and insulting to the audience is what I think this is a big line. And that's probably hard to find, but you can find it.
Yeah. Do you remember your first like haha moment as a wrestling fan? Like something you saw, you're like, okay, that was funny. Because for me, it was Andy Kaufman. That was, to me, I was rolling watching the Andy Kaufman stuff.
Yeah, that was before my time as a wrestling fan. Although I did do an entire, like, a huge project in high school about Andy Kaufman, and did a lot about his wrestling, actually.
Nice.
Yeah,
and that stuff was really, really good. I mean,
it was.
That might be some of the best comedic wrestling you're gonna find. Brutus Beefcake when I was a kid.
The barber.
That was him cutting people's hair and stuff like that, especially like the Genius and stuff like that. That is one thing I remember as a kid just thinking was just the best.
Belly laughing.
That's why I mean Brutus the Barber Beefcake is the reason why I'm a wrestling fan. So
well, there you're one of one person to say that.
Yeah, I'm one of few.
All right, CJ, what about you? Do you have an early wrestling comedy memory? Do you have something that drug you in?
So basically, there's two of them. One you already mentioned, the Mae Young giving birth to a hand. I was rolling. I was like, "Oh my god, really?" And I was invested into it. Like, if you remember, they had like weeks of her being like pregnant.
Yes.
And then it finally came to the day, and I was like, what is it? How are they going to do this? And a hand plops out. And I'm like, what? And then Mark Henry hurls and all this other stuff. But that was the first one. And then the second one is actually The Rock's birthday. Mankind bringing out all the people. Yeah. And then whenever he brought out the kindergarten teacher, and he was like, she was like, last time or whenever you were in kindergarten, you wanted to make pancakes and I didn't let you. Well, I brought you some pancakes now. And then he just went with the whole thing.
Yes. The high school football coach and the ex-girlfriend and all that. It was great.
Yep.
So, Patrick, what about you? Of initial comedy wrestling memories?
I got started watching consistently in the early 90s, that was an interesting transition period for the WWF because they were starting to move away from the roided up huge guys.
Yes, the occupation era. Everybody had a job.
Yes. I do remember that well. That was interesting.
Yes.
Trying to think of some specifics from that time period.
Okay.
It's tough, but there were some weird. There was always just the bizarre angles, like especially with the Ultimate Warrior, like
Papa Shango and the vomiting and the spells was like,
right. And,
even as a kid, I'm like, what is going on here? So I'll ask you, if not necessarily for your first, going all time now, what are some of your favorite comedy wrestling moments?
Well, you mentioned the Rock and Sock connection. That just worked because of both characters. Because Foley was trying to joke around and kind of get the Rock to lighten up, and the Rock in his own way kind of played off it, and I think that really worked for both characters because it kind of humanized the Rock's character a little bit to some extent. And Mick Foley in general was great for the comedy spots when he wasn't when he wasn't trying to kill people with barbed wire or whatever. I remember
Dude Love was great, man. He was incredibly funny.
Eye candy for the chicks.
I remember this was in the 90s in WCW, is this completely random thing where Mick Foley and Max Payne were fighting the Nasty Boys, and Missy Hyatt tries to interfere for the Nasty Boys, and during the match, both Cactus Jack and Max Payne like give her a kiss, and she's all disgusted and stuff. Then on the promo they did after that, I forget who's trying to interview them, but Max Payne's saying something like, "They must be eliminated. They must be destroyed." But then the interviewer kicks it over to Mick, and he's like, "What Max is trying to say is that the things that need to be destroyed are the germs in Missy Hyatt's mouth that cause bad breath. They need to be eliminated. They need to be destroyed."
Gingivitis. So I remember Max Payne and Cactus Jack. They were odd but great team at the same time. But see, my favorite's a little bit more recent. I loved Broken Matt Hardy and Brother Nero in Impact. In WWE, it wasn't so great, and in AEW, it hasn't been fantastic either. But in Impact, it was new, it was fresh, it was the rebirth of the cinematic match. I thought that all the final deletion, apocalyptical, all that stuff was. I belly laughed at that. I would show non-fans that stuff and go, "This is why I watch. This is the good stuff."
Yeah, Impact went all in on that, and some things make sense in the Impact universe, like what they've done recently with what they've done with the Undead Realm with Rosemary and those kind of characters, and that on Impact sometimes they'll pull a Lucha Underground and literally kill off a character.
Yes, so Impact is the only major company I know to actually kill off a character when they went to another company.
Yeah, Lucha Underground did it a few times also, and that was again on a promotion where the product kind of catered toward the really over-the-top cinematic stuff.
Yes.
Like Brian Cage literally punched a guy's head off in a cinematic segment.
With the glove of power.
Yes.
The ultimate insider haha moments. I love Lucha Underground, but I understand why it fizzled out. So
it was it was entertaining. It was
I had fun.
Different at a time when fans were looking for something different, and I would have liked to see how season 5 would have panned out, but thus is life. It didn't happen.
I mean, MLW is basically kind of doing it now to an extent.
They got the artist formerly known as Dario Cueto.
Yes.
So, and I already have way too much wrestling I try to keep up on.
Yes. So, CJ, what about you? What's some favorite moments from wrestling comedy history?
Well, those were my couple favorites, but I also like little stuff that a lot of people don't really notice, like when Mankind came rolling down on the stretcher.
Oh yeah.
That was good. Or kind of a morbid one when Big Boss Man, the Big Boss Man,
The casket.
stole Big Show's
All right. So,
dad's casket.
I'm going to tell one real quick that I still laugh. It's been 20 something years, but I still laugh at it. When Mick Foley debuted Cactus Jack in Madison Square Garden against Triple H, all right? He goes and he hits him with a trash can and then dumps the trash on him. And the spoon lands perfectly in the middle of Triple H's back and like stays there for about 4 moves. Just this plastic spoon. I'm like, okay, that's just awesome. That's physics. All right, Zach, what about you? What are some of your favorite comedy moments?
Well, some of my favorite comedy moments are, it's really more like teams or groups or people.
Mm-hmm.
So like Biggie. Like Biggie just had a ton of really good comedy moments, like the real famous gif of him eating the popcorn and just like him doing the splits or dressed like a baby for New Year's Day, like for New Year's Eve. Like he had a bunch of them that were just that consistently like actually funny. I mean, all the New Day, both like everyone from the New Day is really funny. And
they are
really
an example of guys that are comedy that still have great matches on top of the card. I mean, Kofi's WWE champion, Xavier's King of the Ring, Big E WWE champion. So yeah, they made it work.
And then like the Iconics, like recently, they were legitimately both very funny. Especially Billie Kay. She was hilarious, and she had incredible comedic timing in like every single instance.
Hey, Kayla.
Yes, her screaming, "You gotta be joking!" Like whatever it was that she would scream, and like it was like she was consistently really funny.
Yeah. So what do you think is the juxtaposition? Like where do we go with the redemption of comedy? So we'll start with CJ on this one. Like, 3MB, for example, was a joke of a faction. They were there to put people over. They were undercard guys. Yet when they break up and get released and come back, Drew McIntyre's WWE champion. Jinder Mahal somehow is WWE champion. We just talked about Big E and Kofi and Xavier getting over with a ridiculous gimmick. So what does it take to redeem that comedy and make it go to the top of the card?
I mean, people are gonna think about it no matter what, like if they're gonna love it or hate it.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like if let's say you're at a main event, you're the main event, like there should be like a little bit less of a comedy, and then it's go time. Mm-hmm. So like if you look at some matches like at the beginning of the card, there's more comedy than wrestling. But then at the end, or like at the main event, you do a little bit of comedy. Oh, heel does something. Babyface. Oh, now I'm serious. All right, let's go. You want to play with me? Let's go. Okay. And then, but here's the kicker: you don't have to be serious through the whole match, right? You don't. Like,
no.
You could. There's a silly part, and then I'm serious, and then you're like, this is okay. Now I like he's beating him up. Oh no! The babyface ducks the line, gets him into a waist lock, start making him dance. He's like, "What in the world?" Babyface clocks him. Starts his comeback.
Yeah. So do you see is there a comedy wrestler out there right now that you see is like maybe could be a reclamation project and be a top of the card guy? Like we mentioned Danhausen, Orange Cassidy, all those guys. Do you see any of those guys that are out there right now that are predominantly quote unquote the funny guys that could be carry a company?
Good thing you said that, described it a little bit more. I was going to say me.
Hey, I'm waiting to see you on Mondays or Wednesdays. I'm just saying.
I know, right? They need to put me on.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, I really want to see Orange Cassidy as like one of the top guys, because I think even though he barely says anything, He put like his whole moveset is with his hands in his pockets. Then whenever he's serious, they come out. But the dude can make a promo without any words, 0 words, and it's good. Not a lot of people can do that.
Yeah. So, Zach, same question. The reclamation guys that were comedy and moved on. How do we build them back up after they've been stereotyped as comedy?
I think just in general, they have to be good at comedy, and that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
I mean, Patrick's a stand-up. He can tell you how hard stand-up comedy is. It's terrible. And being comedic on, say, like, and that's what, on the indies, and when you're in front of a small group, and you're trying to be funny, that's kind of like stand-up. And then being funny on TV is also a skill that you need. Like, it's hard to do. Not everyone can just go and be funny and charming on television. And so, like, those guys that are on, like, the big companies, they kind of have to do both. They have to be funny in front of 18,000 people and then funny on TV in front of a couple million people. And that's really hard to do. And that's why you don't have very many people that do it very well. But like guys like Orange Cassidy can. And like I said, I think Orange Cassidy could carry AEW. I think he could be their main champion, and he'd do fine. They also have Danhausen. Danhausen does a great job with it as well. And then, even kind of outside of outside of the ring, but associated with AEW is like RJ City. He's incredibly funny. And he would wrestle on the indies. I don't know if he does anymore because of what he does with AEW.
Yeah.
But he was hilarious, and he was incredibly good. And he could maybe not carry AEW, but he could definitely you could have him top of any of your any indie promotion, and you'd be fine.
His interview segment is great. Hey Ooh is a good watch.
And he's one of the funnier people on Twitter, yet alone like in wrestling. Like just in general, he's hilarious.
He used to have Twitter Spaces back when that people still use Twitter. That RJ City makes coffee in his underwear.
Yes,
thousands of people would come and listen to him talk, and it was he had him in the palm of his hand every week. So I mean, Patrick, is there someone out there that you think is a comedy wrestler that needs to be brought up? Indies, mainstream, that kind of thing.
You mentioned Orange Cassidy, and I agree that I think fans a lot of people would want to see, for instance, him challenge MJF. And I think his current international title reign has really built him up as somebody who's capable of hanging with the best in the world. And really shown what he can do. And one name from recent past that is unfortunately out of the in-ring action of wrestling was R.D. Evans. Very funny character.
He was great.
Like he was
Archibald Peck was one of my favorite characters in Shikara. It was fantastic.
Right. He was tall enough to be believable as a physical threat. And like he would pop up every once in a while. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, he never caught on as a wrestler in a major company. So and it's like Zach said that, I mean, it took me several years to get even decent on stage as far as comedy goes. For some people, it comes a little more naturally, that they're a little more personable and can connect with an audience. And sometimes you'll be in front of an audience where it just doesn't connect. So, and you got to figure out what to do then and maybe change up your game. So, and I'm trying to think of a current name. I mean, I think Xavier Woods would be one, simply because he's the one of the New Day that hasn't been a world champion yet. He's been King of the Ring. I would like to see him maybe get an IC or US title reign at the very least.
Yeah.
I mean, it took him a long time to be recognized as more than the third wheel, so to speak, of the New Day.
Unfortunately, yes, but I think he's got a chance still to ICUS. I think for sure.
I mean, he had that great match with Gunther.
Yeah, that was great. It was great.
That had to be that. if they had any doubt that he could carry an IC top like a title like the US or the IC title, they probably went away after that match.
Mm-hmm.
You know, on the indie scene, and it's maybe we're all a little biased because I think we all know him, but like Dan the Dad, that's a really good comedy character and comedy wrestler, and he can really go too. If you want him to be a serious wrestler, he can do that too, and he can really go. Even like Warhorse, that's kind of a comedy character. I mean, and he's not a comedy wrestler,
but it is played for laughs.
But that, I mean, like that, all like every Warhorse promo is pretty gosh darn funny. And,
and if you're listening, if you haven't seen his Slim Jim stuff on Twitter, go look at it. He's courting Slim Jim to be the new Macho Man Randy Savage spokesman. It's brilliant. Go give it a look. It's outstanding.
Those are two St. Louis guys that you know, like I said, all of us know them both, and they're both very, very funny, and they have and. They're pretty well known, you know, in the indie scene now. They're going all over. I mean, I think Dan just got back from Japan. And Warhorse has gone all over the place too. So, those are two guys that I know that could carry promotions and carry and carry shows just as more comedy guys too.
So, CJ, this next one's for you because you're the worker in the room. I have to ask. So this is kind of outside of comedy, but. As I'm a referee and we got fans in the room. Is it wrong to have a chuckle when something goes wrong in the ring as a fan or as someone else? Like if there's a botch, is it wrong to have a laugh at that? Or if somebody forgets their line in a promo, is it disrespectful to have a laugh at that?
It kind of depends.
As long as everyone's okay.
Yeah, as long as everyone's okay. I mean, it depends on. Okay, are you going to feel embarrassed about it, or are you going to figure out how to cover it up? You know what I mean?
Yeah, because
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think I'm a bad sports fan if I watch the Cardinals blooper reel, the 2023 season. So I don't think I'm a bad wrestling fan if I, in good spirits, have a laugh at a simple botch. So as long as nobody got hurt.
I'm just going to say there's no such thing as a botch. That's just me.
Things happen for a reason or what?
Things happen for a reason. If someone slips. It was too slippery. They met. Oh snap!
So a lot of sweat on those ropes.
So Zach, are we bad fans if we laugh at a botch or a messed up promo?
I don't think so. I think a botch in the ring, like you said, of course, the disclaimer or the the caveat that nobody gets hurt. Like if I think it's less embarrassing for a worker that botches in the ring and gets laughed at than say a promo. Like but because that's what wrestling is like. First thing you do first thing you train is wrestle. You don't train promos first, and they're wrestlers, and so those things happen. And I think they're a little bit more. And it's just, but promos can be uncomfortable, and then when you start to have people laugh at them, man, that's.
I mean, there's the famous clip, the famous Miz when he first started having to have his lines on his hand for the Diva Surge, and he got torn to shreds for that. Yeah. And I mean, justifiably so. Fine, you're supposed to be professional, but it happens. So,
but you have somebody like you have somebody like Botch in the ring, and you get the "you fucked up" chants or whatever. I'm sorry if I can't cuss. I don't know.
You can. You
get those chants. That's generally fine. I don't think that's, as long as if it's good natured, it's okay.
Yeah, but if you're being, like I said, if you're being mean, if being malicious, that's a whole nother subject. So Patrick, are we bad fans if we point this stuff out, or is it just part of the game?
Personally, I think it's part of the game, and I mean, when you're at independent wrestlings, it's kind of part of the game that it's every once in a while it's going to be a little rough around the edges, and even every once in a while on television, sometimes something happens. There's a slip. There's maybe a slight miscommunication, and stuff happens. And like I said, I don't really think much of it personally. I know there's people like the people that put together Botchamania who are, that's their whole bread and butter. And
so there
are so many verbal gaffes that live forever in wrestling history.
Yeah.
One of my favorite wrestling shows to ever go to, I'll call it wrestling show because it was a wrestler and another guy, it was Colt Cabana and Marty DeRosa and they would do commentary to bad wrestling matches. And it was a lot of fun. I had fun going to those shows. I went twice, and I got to have a good laugh. But so, Patrick, this next one is aimed more towards you, and then we'll get the rest of the guys' opinion. What is harder to watch, bad comedy or bad wrestling?
Oh, that's a fun one right there. Because I've seen both, and
so have I.
I've been the bad comedy at times, to be fair.
Yeah.
And I think, for a little bit, you can kind of have a bit of a chuckle at it, but after a certain point, you just start to feel uncomfortable for the person on stage or the people in the ring, and you don't even know what to say to them sometimes.
Yeah.
And like if the person if I'm in an open mic and it's someone's first or second time on stage or whatever, and maybe they drank or smoked something before the show and they forgot what all they were going to say. I've seen that happen a few times, and I've had my times on stage where I've just completely drawn a blank, and it wasn't fun.
Yeah. See, I'll say this. I actually sometimes like to watch bad wrestling, because we used to do a segment on the show called Breaking the Scale, where we'd watch a 5-star match and a negative 5-star match. Like one time we watched, Mimi Toyota and Aja Kong, and then we watched Jenna Maraska and Charmel. And we had so much fun watching Jenna Maraska and Charmel because it was so bad. Yeah. So I enjoyed it. So, Zach, what do you think? Bad comedy, bad wrestling, which is harder to watch?
Oh, man. Bad comedy for me.
Yeah.
Someone bombing on stage is just, it's
painful.
It's painful to me. I hate watching. I really don't like that.
Yeah.
It
makes me uncomfortable. I mean, how they feel.
And I've seen a lot of bad wrestling, man.
We all.
And so, and with that, it's just for whatever reason, it's just, that's easier for me to watch. It seems less awful and awkward for people, because even very skilled wrestlers will have bad wrestling matches. I've seen matches where the crowd's dead, and that's just the way it is. But
I've seen teams and singles where everyone in the match was very talented and very good at what they do, and the match just laid an egg for whatever reason. But still, it was better to watch than some poor schmuck bombing on stage. So, CJ, thoughts on that? Bad comedy, bad wrestling? Which would you rather watch?
I think I'm on the other end. I think I'd rather watch bad comedy than a bad wrestling match, because I've seen some pretty bad ones. I don't want to go into detail, but they were bad.
So, I mean,
he probably doesn't want to offend me.
Oh. So the next question I have, we'll start with CJ this time as well. We'll go back to you. Why do people think that this is some new concept, comedy and wrestling? Because Antonio Rocca, I mentioned in the article I wrote for this piece, would smack people across the face with a ball of his foot and would do dance moves. And Gorgeous George was so flamboyant and trying to elicit a response. So why do people think this is something new? Is it recency bias, or just wrestling fans that short-sighted, or what is it?
I think it's just an evolution of wrestling, to be honest with you, because back then they were more character based, and now it's kind of trying to be more serious, and then you got to think about how indie wrestling has evolved into its own thing again. So we might not have the territories, but people might hate me for this, but I still consider AEW an independent company, for indie wrestlers. Even though it's a big stage, I don't think they're organized.
I think on the lower card that's true, because some of these guys on the lower card are using AEW for indie bookings.
Yep.
You might be on Dark or Rampage in the hopes of booked more on the indies. I could see that.
Yeah, and that's what And that's what I mean about that. It's kind of like, which is great. It's great for them. It's great. I mean, I would love to go on AEW just to wrestle for them. Like that'd be
we
great.
all know people that have been on Dark or Rampage ourselves. So I mean, so Zach, why do people think this is new? Why do people think that this wrestling comedy is some new occurrence? Is it confirmation bias? Is it recency bias? Is it wrestling fans being morons? What is it?
Yeah, it's just because they're wrong. And it's just a way for them to kind of complain about whatever they want to complain about.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep, agreed.
And I think that's just really what it is. Because there's been comedy wrestling since there's been wrestling, and
yeah,
I mean, you name plenty of people. You named a couple people yourself, but that's just the way it is. There's always been comedy wrestling. There's always been very successful, very popular characters that are comedy wrestlers, and you can go back as far as you can go back. And so it's just that if they think it's some brand new thing, like, oh, it used to be all serious. Well, no, it wasn't, and that's just what you want to use to complain about the modern product and whatever.
I fully agree with that. And so we got a couple more questions before we get out of here. But Patrick, the one I have with you, and it's a bit on a serious topic when it comes to comedy. Is it wrong to play a stereotype for comedy? Be it like Santino again was the bumbling Italian fool, and you had a litany of gay stereotypes, Goldust, Adrian Street, all that stuff throughout history. Is it wrong to play the stereotype, or does it really depend on how it's played?
I would imagine that it depends on how it's played. And I mean, wrestling for the longest time has relied on a lot of stereotypes to drive its characters. And I mean, I've often said that the easiest way to get booed at a wrestling show is to come out waving some other country's flag.
Okay.
Because USA is really easy to chant.
Tale as old as time.
Yep. And comedy is a bit of a different story because I think unless you're like a blatantly really over-the-top character on stage, it comes off as more coming from the person. So if you're trying to be this over-the-top stereotype, that can reflect a little badly on you.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, CJ, same question. Is it wrong to stereotype for comedy, or is it really situational? Was Billy and Chuck okay?
Yeah, Billy and Chuck's fine.
Goldust, all that stuff.
I think it's not only depending on how it's played, but also if the wrestler is comfortable doing that.
Okay.
Because there are some people that aren't comfortable with playing a stereotype. Or I shouldn't say play, but they don't want to enhance their character as a stereotype.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? Like, you want. On one hand, it could make them money if they look at it, but on the other hand, it's like, do you want to be known for this?
Okay. Zach, same question.
Yeah, I think it's bad. I don't think you should do stereotypes to play for comedy. Some people have moved past it. It's arguable Goldust moved past it. That early stuff was tough. But looking back on it though, it wasn't how Dustin Rhodes is playing Goldust. It was how the people were reacting. People reacting to him. How how the announcers would react to him and stuff like that. That always seemed like to be the worst part of it than even Goldust. I mean, the actual character and stuff. But yeah, it's just I don't know anybody that's like I said, if people have moved past it, some people that have done comedy, even like Santino Marella, he kind of moved past the stereotype. I mean, having a cobra hand isn't an Italian stereotype or anything like that. He moved on beyond it. But generally, yeah, I think it's just a bad thing to do, and I don't know if there's ever anyone. He wasn't funny when he was just that either, but although Italian stereotype is a little different than some of the other ones that have been played at.
Yes, some of the blatantly homophobic ones that we've seen in the past.
Those I don't. I've never those I don't know if there's really been too many people that have moved past stuff like kind of stuff like that. But
I would say Billy Gunn did. I mean, that could have been a potential career killer, and now he's scissoring people.
Yeah, but not like that version of the Billy Gunn character.
No,
beyond that, really.
Yeah, but yeah, I would. I'm not the biggest fan of stereotyping. I have some problems with some characters in modern wrestling, even, and in the past wrestling. But it is what it is. And if you, like I said, if you can move past it, if it's done respectfully, at least, hopefully we can get there. So, okay, we got one last question going around the round table. We'll start with Patrick. So, where do you see comedy wrestling going? Are we going to have more of it, less of it, status quo? What do you think?
I think that with a wider variety of wrestling available to your average fan, I think we're going to see a little bit more of it because fans have access to a wider variety of wrestling now. I mean, when I first started watching, all you had was what was on television. Now, with all the streaming services and stuff like that, you can watch wrestling from around the world. You can watch pretty much whatever you want, whether it's Japanese, Mexican, something like DDT, or different independents who have like Chikara's not around anymore, but groups that have a similar vibe to them.
Lucha Vavoom, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
So, CJ, do you think we'd have more, less, the same? What do you think?
I think it's going to be the same. Like they're going to try to balance it out. I mean,
it's like Patrick was just saying. We're going to have when Collision launches here later in June. We're going to have wrestling on every single night of the week again for the first time in forever.
I'm going to be honest with you. I have no idea what Collision is.
It's AEW's version of Thunder. It's AEW's.
Oh, the new show. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So we're going to have wrestling on it.
I didn't know they released the name for it.
Yes, their logo is exactly like the Monday Nitro Classic logo too. So it's like that's not good awesome foreshadowing, Tony. But so you're going to say status quo? We're going to be pretty much where we are now, is with comedy.
Yeah, I think it's going to stay the same. They're gonna people are going to pull from places, and there's going to be too much. There's either going to be too much. There's going to be too less. There's going to be a perfect amount. 50-50 wrestling is starting to be a very popular wrestling style now, and a lot more people are going towards that, especially on the from what I've seen, the independent circuit. Of course, I try to attaching myself to that or being a part of that. I try to see everything and see what I can do differently, so I'm not put in the group. You know what I mean?
So, Zach, what do you think? More, less, the same, depends, or what?
I think people are a little bit more open to it nowadays.
Okay.
Honestly, I think
so. We'll see a bit more.
Yeah, probably, and with more people kind of openly being kind of in on it, I think kind of allows comedy wrestling to be a little bit more popular. But I mean, also, a lot of the Attitude Era was stuff that was being played for comedy.
Oh, for sure.
Really popular. There's probably more comedy then, more comedy than there is now. And so it's kind of just the ebb and flow of the business and of times and tastes and stuff like that. But I think that people are a little bit more open to it, say, now than they were in, I don't know, 2011, 2013 and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
Especially on the indie scene. Back then the indie scene was very serious. It was very serious.
I'm very curious if the UFC merger is going to affect comedy wrestling. I don't think so. I think Endeavor knows where their bread is buttered, but
yeah, I mean, Vince McMahon is going to be in control of it, so he's going to have his.
Unfortunately,
you're probably going to have the same WWE style comedy where it's just good guys bullying, being bullies to bad guys and stuff like that to play for comedy by just being mean to them.
Be a star.
Yeah, don't be a bully, be a star.
Yeah, right. But here I am bullying whoever, stomping on somebody's pet spider.
Yeah. Oh, that poor spider. All right, so Zach, before we get out, do you have anything to plug or without your socials, anything like that?
Hey, follow CJ Shine on all of his social media, man. Feel the shine.
Why not?
Twinkle, twinkle, baby, as he says, man. Always. He's in, if you're in Georgia, if you're watching this in Georgia, go find out what show he's on next. Go watch it. CJ's one of the best, and he's not just the best in Missouri now. He's one of the best in Georgia. He's one of the best in that's going. And you're gonna love a CJ Shine match. And if you're a worker or if you are a promoter, you're gonna love having CJ Shine on your show, and you're gonna love working with CJ Shine. So everybody.
I've had the pleasure of working several CJ Shine matches, and they're always a fantastic time. Patrick,
that's who I want to plug.
Yeah, do you have anything you want to plug or socials you want to throw out or anything?
Most of my socials are at PatrickAB7. Take a lot of pictures at local independent wrestling shows, pictures of other random stuff, pictures of the Transformers collection. It's all there.
It's a fantastic collection, by the way. You're doing great.
Yeah, my credit card rises in agony, but anyway. But like, also I want to plug Ben Simon's website, stlouiswrestling.com, spell out Saint. He keeps a really good calendar of local independent wrestling events, so you can see the options that are out there and pick out what you think would be best for you in a given weekend.
So before I let you go, I have to say this to you and to Ben Simon. Thank you both for not only being great fans and Ben being a great ring announcer, for being the arbiters of the St. Louis wrestling history.
Yeah.
I don't know how many matches over the past 15 years have been lost without you guys documenting everything. So thank you so much for that, Patrick. You are a saint.
And
yes, thank you.
And thanks to you guys I've been going to shows now for 23 years that which is longer than some of the local wrestlers have been alive, and I feel very old. But I've seen a lot of cool stuff. I've seen plenty of not so cool stuff. I've seen people come and go. I've seen people call the cops on a show. I've seen a couple of times, but there's a lot of stories there.
Nice. All right, CJ, go ahead.
Before CJ goes,
yes.
Let me also plug CJ's greatest rival and greatest opponent here in St. Louis, especially the Snitch. Follow him at Who Is Snitch on Twitter, or just look up Snitch on Facebook and follow him.
That current Dynamo Pro champion.
Yes, he's the current Dynamo Pro heavyweight champion.
I still have a twitch in my left diaphragm where that bastard poked me in it. I'm just saying. CJ, plug away, my good man. Where are we gonna see you?
All right, you guys can see me or catch me, talk to me at Real CJ Shine on my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, but also I have a pro wrestling tee website under CJ Shine, and here's one of my shirts.
Woo!
You can get. Bam!
Outstanding. So, do you have any upcoming events? June 17th.
All right. You know what? I'm gonna tell you guys. So, yes, I do have some events. I got June 11th, which is PWC over in Georgia. I have June 17th, which is Dynamo Pro Wrestling over in Pacific, Missouri. Then Coastal Empire Wrestling on June 24th over in Savannah, Georgia. But are you guys ready? Are you guys ready?
Yeah, let's hear it.
So I will be in the St. Louis area all month of July and half of August. So if anyone wants to book me, which a lot of my Saturdays are booked up. I got a couple of Sundays and one Friday. Ooh. But if you guys still want to book me, I'm going to be in Illinois and St. Louis area all July and half of August.
Take notes. I'd love to see you back here. I'd love to call another match for you.
Current Dynamo D1 champion.
Yeah.
Got to defend that belt eventually. So
right.
now I will plug my stuff. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at 1_2_3 miles. You can buy this shirt that's the hockey jerseys on right now that CJ designed.
That's a brick wall.
Yeah, well, CJ designed my shirt right there. This the Miles shirt. A CJ sign design at ProWrestlingTees.com with Christopher Miles. And you know what? I will be in Alton, Illinois with Highland, Illinois with Pro Wrestling Epic on June 3rd. I will be at the same show CJ will be at in Pacific, Missouri, June 17th. And you know what? Book me too. If you're gonna book CJ, book me. I'm a adequate ref. Come on, guys. Plus I got a show. Come on. But until next time, for Patrick, for CJ, for Zach, I'm Christopher Miles, and I have issues with wrestling.